Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Avatar comic video. This one is going to be basically my final thoughts / predictions before Smoke and Shadow Part 2 comes out. So, we have the preview. All we're really waiting for right now is the book to actually be released. So, this is as good a time as any to kind of give my final thoughts, predictions going into Part 2. So, getting straight into it, the middle part of any of these comic series is always the kind of hardest one to predict how good it's going to be, how much stuff is actually going to happen, because obviously the majority of the plot and character development has to happen here, but it also has to leave a lot of the reveals and stuff like that, the resolution, to Part 3. So it's always weird to see what are the things of note that happen in a Part 2 compared to a Part 3 or something like that. And in this story specifically, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of different characters that have things of note happening to them. I don't really know what's going to happen here. I think my prediction right now would be that I really do think it's going to be the most middle part of any middle part of a comic we've got so far. I don't think we're going to get a lot of resolution on much of anything here, and I think Part 3 probably will just be wrapping everything up, big moments happening. The obvious prediction is that Azula, towards the second half of this book, is going to make an appearance, and we'll see I don't think we'll get the full explanation of where she's been, but maybe they'll hint at why she's back now, and just give us an idea of kind of her mental state at this point in time, what exactly she's trying to do, because based on what we've seen from the kind of really early solicitation descriptions of Part 2 and 3, it seems that the way they reintroduce her is that she is introduced and she just causes kind of chaos. She is a clear threat to everyone around her, and that she's dangerous and stuff like that. So they're introducing her not as a friendly character, as an enemy that Zuko's going to have to deal with, and that's obviously going to be something that he's dealing with, that he doesn't want to have to do anything really serious to Azula, but if she just starts attacking the Fire Nation capital and is threatening everything, he, as the Fire Lord, has to stand up to her, because I suppose that's been the big thing, especially in the last book, Ukano definitely kind of put it on Zuko that oh, you're kind of abusing your power kind of thing, was kind of hinting at that, and Zuko has to be kind of careful about how he handles Azula. I do think this is more speculation about what's going to happen in Part 3 compared to Part 2, but if she does appear in Part 2, that's definitely a question. Just how Zuko handles Azula is going to be a big thing, just with regards to how the Fire Nation sees him as their ruler. But the more notable things is obviously going off the preview. We have not the first 6 pages in the preview, but we have the way it works basically is that there's going to be 2 pages, then we get the 6-page preview, and then the rest of the book. So something happens in the first 2 pages that they clearly didn't want to show in the preview. I have a feeling that may just be here's what the Kamurakage is doing, they have Tom Tom captured or something like that. It could be a catch up with Azula, but I don't think so. The other thing then obviously is that they quickly get Aang to the Fire Nation, and Katara and Sokka kind of out of the story. I don't think we're going to follow Sokka and Katara as a side plot over the course of Part 2 and 3. I just don't think there's enough time to actually explore anything like that. If they do make an appearance again in Smoke and Shadow, I think it will be towards the end of Part 3 where they're wrapping everything up, and they'll just establish that okay, they've arrived back, and maybe have some sort of cliffhanger ending to potentially set up a Sokka Katara story, and Aang needing to return to the Water Tribes or something like that. But for the most part, I don't think Sokka or Katara is going to really be involved much of at all in the rest of the series. We may see a page or 2 of them just getting on the boat back to the Water Tribe or something like that, but I really don't see how they're going to be involved all that much. So there's that. As for, obviously what they're setting up right now as the plot, which is there's an investigation into the Kage who have captured Tom Tom, and then we know from like the descriptions that there's going to be other kids across the Fire Nation who are going to be kidnapped as well. And then Ukano, is going to be planning another attack on Zuko to obviously save his family from his perspective. That's the kind of blackmail job that the Kage are doing on Ukano, May's father. So something's going to happen there. But, what exactly is Aang going to be doing here? Because it obviously raises the important question of, like, are the Kage spirits, or are they people dressed up as spirits using this legend that's fairly well known of the Fire Nation against everyone? Personally, like, I think everything right now points towards it being some sort of a trick type thing where it's people using this as opposed to spirits themselves, just because everything we know points to the fact that spirits do not care about human affairs. So why would they really get heavily involved in the minutiae of Fire Nation politics? And especially the way they go about doing what they're doing, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But at the same time, I don't think there's been any evidence that really gives you a clear explanation or hint as to who the people behind the masks actually are. In that, like, the way they handle these situations are weird in that they're clearly powerful, being, like, strong enough to obviously capture Tom Tom without and get away from May and stuff like that. But there's only, like, 3 of them at most. So they don't have enough power to change the Fire Nation on their own. So they're kind of manipulating Ukano and his organization, the New Ozai Society, to get Zuko off the throne, which seems to be, like, their ultimate goal, that they don't agree with Zuko, and they're aware of, like, Ukano's failure as, like, the governor of New Ozai and stuff like that. Just like the big thing is just that they clearly see Zuko as a weakling. That's the kind of key point that they're going for here. But I don't know exactly how they're going to go about doing this. Like, there's crazy theories that you could go for, that, like, maybe no one knows it, but somehow, like, Ozai has secretly been, like, kind of broken out of jail, and this is Ozai's kind of, without bending, his attempt to kind of gain power from a position of having no power. I don't think that's going to be the case, but at the same time, like, why do these people dress up as spirits care about who's Fire Lord and who's not? Because they clearly don't want to make Ukano the next Fire Lord. They don't seem to have any obvious, like, want to have Ozai be the Fire Lord again, or want to be the Fire Lord themselves. It's just that they don't want Zuko there. So it's something personal against Zuko. So I don't really know, maybe that is a kind of bigger hint. But they're also aware of, like, Ukano's family, and they're using them to kind of blackmail him and get him on their side. So where exactly this is leading, I'm not incredibly sure. Especially now that, like, Ukano has kind of failed, and obviously, like, Tom Tom has been captured, and so, like, he's under so much pressure, and he's aware that of the cruelty of the Kage and stuff like that. So I'm not incredibly sure where exactly they're going with the main plot. Obviously, I think at this point they're probably gonna try and show, like, Zuko's ineptitude as a leader, in that he can't right now stop all of these kids from being kidnapped, and even the Avatar is on board, and he can't stop them either, and they're gradually turning things against Zuko. That, look at your Fire Lord, he's just not saving your children, or something like that. That's potentially what they're going for, but even then, like, it's nothing obviously clear, like, is hinting at this. So, that is the main plot of this series. What the Kage, the New Ozai Society, and stuff like that. The I suppose final kind of threat to Zuko's reign as Fire Lord. We obviously know he remains as Fire Lord, so I don't think anything huge is going to happen here. But something has to change, and obviously, like, a part of this is Ukano doesn't seem to respect Zuko as a leader, and it's very telling, like, going into some of the May stuff, like, what Ukano says to Zuko to May about Zuko, and that Zuko has no problem with strong arming his own people, but it's the rest of the world he should be worried about. He pushed you away and stuff like that. So yeah, like I suppose that the idea he's going for here is that like Ukano's trying to say that look, Zuko, he doesn't actually have any friends anymore in the Fire Nation. Most of his friends are from outside there, like the Avatar, Katara, Sokka, and stuff like that. He's giving in a lot to the other nations, and I think it comes from this position of Ukano clearly being somewhat villainous here in the way he's been emotionally manipulating May, but the fact that he still believes that the way the Fire Nation was before, during the war, and the power they had over the other nations and how they got that was correct, and that he seems to believe that he should have a position of power just by default because of the way things happened. He doesn't seem to understand why Zuko has to kind of be seen to be kind of more open and changing the way that the Fire Nation is now. And right now, that involves kind of partly demilitarizing the Fire Nation, not making them look as powerful as threatening, and make amends for what happened with the war. So there's stuff here in terms of Ukano's development, in that you can understand where he's coming from the perspective of a lot of this stuff he is doing to protect his family, but he still has, for the most part, put his belief that Ozai should still be Fire Lord above that. So he has some development to do, and that, I suppose, leads into the whole May situation. And I really do think that at some point May and Zuko will get back together. As much as the Kalo thing, they've went fairly heavily for it in part 1 and what we've seen so far in the preview for part 2, I just can't see them keeping this as like a thing going forward, just because May and Zuko's relationship, for what we know of it in ATLA and the little bit we've seen of it in the comics, and even part 1, the little hints towards May and Zuko getting back together, I feel are so much stronger than any sort of connection that Kalo and May are developing. I think part of this is still that Kalo as a character still needs to be a bit more developed, in that when I was reading part 1, and even now looking back on it, I still don't know exactly what way to take Kalo, in that sometimes I feel sympathetic for him, sometimes I'm like, you're clearly undercover, but for the most part May seems to trust him now after everything. So how exactly they're going to get from that position of like, right now Kalo's presented to us as a fairly nice character, sympathetic towards him, how are they going to like nicely enough break up those two and get May and Zuko back together without really just overdoing the romance drama, which no one likes? I'm not really sure on that count. I do think that they will do the Ty Lee and Kalo relationship, just because I think that's been hinted as a thing, and that she seems to like him more so than I think May, which definitely the whole May and Kalo getting together very much is, I think, somewhat of a response from May towards the scene I just mentioned there with the scene she had with her father when she let him go, and what he said to her about obviously Zuko pushing her away and stuff like that. And again, it does relate back to why they broke up in the first place, and that Zuko had so much going on in his life at the time when that breakup happened, that he was dealing with just recently having become the Fire Lord, a lot of issues coming up with Yu Dao, still not knowing what's up with his mother, situation with his sister. You can understand why he wasn't able to focus so much on his relationship with everything that was happening. Most of that's resolved now. It's just the direct situation he's in now with May's father's group, primarily the Murakage and so on, and they've put them in a position where like May, together to get her brother back, needs the help of Zuko, needs the help of Aang, and that the old team, I suppose, and so that may bring them back together. And that Kalo's kind of injured from the last time out. He's kind of recovered, I think they say, but that may limit him going out on really any sort of missions or stuff like that. So where exactly they go from there is weird, because usually in these sort of situations you'd think they'd make Zuko and Kalo kind of enemy type things because of the whole romance thing, but they seem to be somewhat friendly. Zuko seems to respect Kalo, but something more has to come with Kalo for sure. I don't think they've told us everything we need to know about him. So that's that. And then the other thing is obviously the side plot of kind of Zuko's family returning to the Fire Nation, and that mainly Ursa here, but also some of the stuff they're doing with Ki and how this sort of relates to Azula. The obvious thing here is that the way we leave Ursa in part 1 is that she's basically having a panic attack, having seen the portrait of Ozai. Now, to me, this is hinting to some extent that they're going to tackle how Ursa feels about Ozai. And I would think that part of the way that you would resolve that would be that she has to get past this by actually visiting him in prison and telling him how she felt all the time that they were together and how she felt about their relationship, forced marriage. As well as that, like, you know, how she feels about the fact that he scarred Zuko. What he has done to Azula in many ways. Like, Ozai definitely is responsible for a lot in many ways for Azula's mental state. So, you know, she has a lot to get off her mind to him, but she's afraid of him. And I think this may be the moment where you bring Ikem back into things and make him very effective, I suppose, as Ursa's new husband, and that he supports her as she does this. And then, you know, part of the reason why her relationship with Ki is a kind of a problem right now is because Ki is aware that, you know, she's dealing with the fact that her mother's changed, and I think over time that will fix itself naturally, but it's not happening immediately because Ursa isn't acting like herself in the first place, because she's reacting to the fact that she's back in the Fire Nation royal capital. And so Ki, seeing her mother petrified, is obviously making Ki kind of back away from her mother. So Ursa needs to resolve her issues before her issues with Ki can be resolved. So I think that's going to be somewhat of a side plot. I would hope that Ikem is somewhat involved in like fixing all of that, just because Zuko has so much to resolve himself that I don't know how important he's going to be to that resolution itself. But the thing where the Azula connection comes in is that they've clearly set up some sort of a kind of contrast between Zuko's relationship with Ki, his new sister, and how great it is compared to the really badly strained relationship he has with Azula. Combination with the fact that, you know, for the most part, you know, but apart from the issue that's happening right now, Ursa has a good relationship with her new daughter, not so much with her older daughter. So I think something's going to happen there. It also links into the fact that the Kamurakage are kidnapping children. Ki is of the similar age, I suppose, so she to me would seem like somewhat of a, like, if anyone's going to get kidnapped next, it's going to be Ki, and that would be an interesting way to somewhat bring Zuko and Mei together, in that they both have to work together to save their siblings and stuff like that, and that would be a nice way to kind of properly romantically, I suppose, reunite them. So there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen there. That's a very complicated issue that Ursa's dealing with, that I'm not sure, like, are they going to have time across the next two parts to, like, have her visit Ozai, or have someone say something to her that gets her kind of past, or helps her to kind of not be so afraid back at the palace? Because, you know, if they're really making this a big deal, like, where are they then going to stay? What is the family situation for Zuko going to be like? I'm not massively sure. Which I suppose the only thing that really leaves is that, you know, what's Aang really going to be doing in the story if these indeed aren't spirits? I think part of the reason he's here is because you kind of Zuko do all of the fighting. Like, Mei obviously is a skilled fighter as well, but you know, you don't have that many like important characters of note who are benders around, and so maybe Aang's just there for that. But maybe they'll do something of note as well, because I think there's a reason they have Zuko and Aang be here together, and that this is an important thing for, I suppose, the peace of the world, that Zuko maintains his role as Fire Lord. So having the Avatar, a respected, somewhat of a world leader there, is going to help things as well. So that's basically my thoughts going into part 2. It's really hard to predict just like exact things that I think part 2 will cover, just because this book has a lot of stuff going on, and I don't know like how much they're going to leave to be resolved in part 3. About the only thing we know about going to part 3 is that I would be 100% confident that Azula will be in part 2 at some point, which will lead Zuko to have to make this crazy decision in part 3 at some point that he's going to make. But again, that's like, to me, the whole thing with Azula, she's not even introduced into the series just yet, and Zuko still has so much other stuff to resolve. Like, while he's dealing with while he's dealing with Azula, what else is going on? Which to me is the only thing that in any way would point towards Azula being part of the Khmer Kage situation. But if that were to happen, that would require backstory for Azula, what she did between the search and now. Which, again, I'm not sure if they have enough time to fully go into her backstory, what she was doing all that time. A lot of stuff to be resolved. In the comments, definitely let me know what your predictions are going into part 2 of Smoke and Shadow, which is coming out December 16th in comic book stores, so 3 weeks from the day I post this video. And I will have a review up, hopefully that day, the day the book comes out. So that's been the review. That's been my predictions for Smoke and Shadow Part 2. Thanks for watching, and bye.